In 21 days, I was in Kailash. I could barely speak. I took one strand of what is there on that mountain. You won't believe. I was almost 10 to 15 years younger. Mount Kailash stands in complete silence, untouched, unclimbed, and unexplained. For thousands of years, this massive black pyramid hidden deep in the Himalayas has terrified explorers, fascinated scientists, and drawn pilgrims from across the world. No human being has ever officially reached its summit, not because no one tried, but because something about this mountain seems to stop people from getting too close. Climbers have reported sudden sickness, strange voices missing time, and an overwhelming feeling that they were never supposed to be there in the first place. Even satellites struggle to explain the bizarre magnetic activity surrounding the region. And now Tibetan monks who have lived near Kailash for decades are finally speaking out about what they believe is truly hidden inside the mountain. But before we expose the terrifying mystery surrounding Mount Kailash, hit like and subscribe, because some believe certain ancient secrets were never meant to be revealed to the world. What you're about to hear is not mythology, not fantasy, and not just another mountain story. This is one of the greatest unsolved mysteries on Earth. And the deeper researchers dig, the stranger it becomes. The mountain nobody has ever climbed. When you look at Mount Kailash from a distance, it looks less like a natural mountain and more like something that was deliberately constructed. It is perfectly symmetrical in a way that seems almost impossible for nature to achieve on its own. Mountains far taller and far more dangerous than Kailash have been climbed by humans. Everest has been summited over 10,000 times. K2, which many climbers consider far more deadly than Everest, has been climbed dozens of times. But Mount Kailash, which is technically not even among the world's 100 tallest peaks, has never once been successfully climbed. And it's not for lack of trying. Over the centuries, many expedition teams have attempted to reach the summit. Every single one of them has either turned back voluntarily or been forced to abandon their attempt by circumstances they struggled to fully explain. In 2001, China officially banned any climbing of Mount Kailash at the request of Hindu and Buddhist religious groups who consider the mountain sacred. But even before that ban, the mountain had already developed a well-earned reputation for being impossible to summit. Climbers reported sudden and extreme weather changes that appeared out of nowhere. Others reported strange disorientation and confusion at altitude levels where they should have been perfectly fine. Some reported that no matter how long they climbed, they never seemed to get any closer to the top. The mountain just seemed not to want to be climbed, and that feeling was very hard to shake. The river of the world. Now here is where things start to get genuinely strange. At the base of Mount Kailash sits Lake Manasarovar, which at an altitude of 4,590 m is one of the highest freshwater lakes in the world. From the general region around Kailash, 4 of Asia's most important rivers have their sources. The Indus, the Brahmaputra, the Sutlej, and the Karnali all flow outward from the Kailash region, and they flow in the 4 cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west. These 4 rivers collectively provide water to nearly 2 billion people across India, China, Nepal, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. Scientists who have studied this have called it one of the most extraordinary hydrological coincidences on the planet. The idea that 4 massive rivers with sources near a single mountain would flow in perfectly opposite directions almost defies what we understand about natural geography. River systems simply don't behave this way under normal circumstances. Ancient Hindu texts called the Puranas actually described this phenomenon thousands of years before modern science confirmed it. The texts described Kailash as the source of 4 great rivers flowing out to the 4 corners of the world. For a very long time, historians assumed this was mythology. Then satellite mapping confirmed the rivers were real and their sources were exactly where the ancient texts said they were. This raised a very uncomfortable question. How did people writing thousands of years ago know the precise geographical layout of a remote corner of Tibet they almost certainly never visited? What the monks know for generations. Tibetan monks living in monasteries near Mount Kailash have kept detailed oral records of everything that has happened around the mountain. These records go back centuries and contain accounts of phenomena that monks have observed and experienced firsthand. In recent years, particularly after the growing global interest in Kailash, following several viral scientific discussions some of these monks have, started sharing portions of these accounts more publicly than ever before, and what they describe as deeply unsettling. Multiple monks across different monasteries have independently reported the same experience near the mountain. Time seems to move differently there, not in a vague poetic sense, but in a measurable literal sense. Monks who spend extended periods near the mountain report that their hair and fingernails grow at an extraordinary rate, far faster than normal biological processes would allow. Some accounts describe nail and hair growth that would normally take weeks, appearing to happen within a single day or two of being near the mountain. Several Western researchers who have visited the Kailash region over the past 2 decades have reported similar things. A group of Russian scientists who visited the area in the early 2000s came back claiming that they had aged at an accelerated rate during their time near the mountain. Some reported that nail growth they would typically expect over 2 to 3 weeks had occurred in just 12 hours. Now it is important to be clear that these accounts have not been scientifically verified under controlled laboratory conditions, but the fact that people from completely different cultures, different eras, and different parts of the world are reporting the exact same phenomenon independently of each other is something that very hard to simply dismiss. The monks have a name for this. They call it the mountain's breath. They believe Kailash exists on a different frequency of time than the rest of the world, and that getting too close to it pulls you into that frequency temporarily. The shape that shouldn't exist here is the detail about Mount Kailash that has genuinely troubled geologists and researchers for decades. The mountain is shaped like a perfect pyramid. Not approximately like a pyramid, not sort of like a pyramid in a loose general sense, but a strikingly precise four-sided pyramid with faces that align almost exactly to the compass points and angles that are remarkably uniform on all sides. Natural geological formations almost never produce this kind of clean, precise symmetry. Mountains form through tectonic collision, erosion, and volcanic activity, which are messy, chaotic forces that produce jagged, irregular shapes. The kind of clean, precise symmetry that Kailash displays is not something that geology naturally tends to produce. Russian researcher Ernst Moldashev, who led multiple scientific expeditions to the Kailash region in the late 1990s and early 2000s, made a claim that generated enormous controversy. He argued after his studies that Kailash showed signs of being a man-made, or at the very least artificially altered structure, a pyramid constructed by an ancient civilization so far in the past that the natural world had slowly begun to reclaim it. He pointed to what he described as geometric precision in the mountain's faces and the presence of several smaller, pyramid-shaped formations around Kailash that seemed to mirror its structure. The mainstream scientific community largely rejected this theory, and it remains unproven. But even scientists who dismiss the pyramid theory acknowledge that the mountain's symmetry is unusually striking and is not straightforwardly explained by standard geological processes. The conversation about how exactly Kailash came to look the way it does has not been fully settled. The wall of ice here is something that is completely verifiable and documented, and it raises serious questions on its own. Despite being only 6,638 meters tall, a height that experienced climbers regularly summit on other mountains, the upper portion of Kailash appears to be functionally inaccessible. This is not just because of the China climbing ban. Before the ban, numerous skilled climbers attempted to approach the upper faces of the mountain, and all of them encountered the same problem. The ice on the upper walls of Kailash forms in configurations that are unlike normal glacial ice. The angles are too steep, the surface is too vertical, and the ice too unpredictably shifting. Multiple expedition leaders who attempted routes up Kailash's faces before 2001 reported that the mountain seemed to actively resist approach, and that routes which appeared viable from a distance became impassable at close range in ways they hadn't anticipated. There is also the matter of the weather. The atmospheric conditions around the summit of Kailash are extraordinarily unpredictable. Clear skies can turn into violent storms within minutes in the Kailash region in ways that experienced Himalayan climbers describe as being unlike anything they've encountered on other peaks in the same range. The storms seem localized specifically around the mountain itself, and they arrive with almost no warning. Tibetan monks do not find any of this surprising. They have always maintained that the mountain is actively protected, not by human hands, but by forces that operate by rules humans do not fully understand. The hidden lakes and underground theories surrounding Mount Kailash are two extraordinary lakes that sit almost side by side. Lake Manasaravar, which Hindus consider one of the holiest bodies of water on earth, and Lake Rakshastal, which is a saltwater lake directly beside it. The two lakes are separated by a narrow strip of land, and they have almost opposite qualities. Manasaravar is a freshwater lake, calm and still. Rakshastal is saline, rough, and windswept. Ancient Hindu texts describe Manasaravar as the lake of the gods, and Rakshastal as the lake of the demon king Ravana. Even their physical characteristics seem to mirror this ancient description. But here is what has recently attracted serious scientific attention. Sonar studies and geological surveys of the Kailash region have indicated the possible presence of large underground chambers and tunnel networks beneath the mountain itself. These findings are preliminary and have not been fully explored or confirmed, but they have been noted in geological reports examining the unusual seismic properties of the Kailash area. The region sits in a seismically active zone, and the way seismic waves travel through the mountain suggests the interior may not be entirely solid in the way other mountains in the range are. Tibetan monks have spoken about underground chambers beneath Kailash for centuries. In the Bon tradition, there are detailed descriptions of what they call hidden lands beneath the mountain, sacred spaces accessible only to those who have reached a sufficient level of spiritual development. For a long time, these were interpreted purely as spiritual metaphors. The geological surveys have not proven that these chambers exist, but they have not ruled them out either. What 2025 brought to light. In 2025, a collection of Tibetan scholars and senior monks from monasteries in the Kailash region made public statements that drew significant international attention. Speaking through translators, they described accounts passed down through their monastic lineages. Accounts that they say have been carefully preserved for hundreds of years, but rarely shared outside their communities. They described Kailash not as a mountain in the traditional sense, but as what they called a cosmic pillar, a point where the physical world and other dimensions of existence intersect. They explained that the phenomena people experienced near the mountain, time distortion, disorientation, and the impossibility of climbing it, are not random. They are consistent with what their tradition has always said about the nature of Kailash. The mountain does not follow physical rules because it does not belong entirely to the physical world. They also address the pyramid shape directly. In the Bon tradition, it is explicitly stated that the shape of Kailash is not natural, but was given to it long before recorded human history by forces. Their tradition does not describe as human. They do not claim to know exactly what those forces were, but they are clear that the mountain's shape is intentional. These are, of course, religious and spiritual claims, and they cannot be verified through scientific methods. But the monks make a fair point in return. The scientific methods that have been applied to Kailash so far have not produced satisfying explanations for its symmetry, its effect on time perception, its rivers, or its resistance to climbing. The mystery remains genuinely open. What 2026 revealed. If 2025 was the year the monks began speaking, then 2026 is the year the world truly started listening. In early 2026, an international coalition of researchers from India, Russia, and Japan formally submitted a joint geological study to the Global Earth Sciences Review, focusing specifically on the Kailash region. This was not a fringe publication or an independent blogger's report. This was a peer-reviewed submission by credentialed scientists who had spent nearly 3 years collecting data from the region surrounding the mountain. Their findings were striking. The study confirmed with a higher degree of confidence than any previous research that the seismic signature of Mount Kailash is fundamentally different from every other mountain in the Himalayan range. When seismic waves pass through a standard mountain, they behave in predictable ways depending on the density and composition of the rock. At Kailash, the waves behave differently. They slow down in places where they should speed up, and they reflect back in patterns that are consistent with large hollow or semi-hollow spaces within the mountain's interior. The study stopped short of calling these spaces chambers, but it explicitly stated that the data could not be explained by standard geological composition alone. Alongside this, a team of atmospheric scientists from the Indian Space Research Organization published a separate but related finding. Using satellite thermal imaging captured across different seasons between 2023 and 2025, they observed that the temperature gradient around the summit of Kailash does not behave the way it should. The upper faces of the mountain retain heat in patterns that are inconsistent with the surrounding rock type and altitude. There are zones near the summit where temperatures fluctuate in ways that have no clear meteorological explanation. These temperature anomalies, the researchers noted, are consistent with the location of the extraordinarily unpredictable storms that climbers have always reported. Something about the mountain's upper structure appears to be interacting with the atmosphere in a way that current science does not fully account for. Perhaps most significantly, in March 2026, the Indian government, in cooperation with Tibetan cultural preservation groups, officially announced the formation of a dedicated scientific and cultural research committee focused exclusively on the Kailash region. This committee, which includes geologists, archaeologists, atmospheric scientists, and representatives from both the Hindu and Bon monastic traditions, has been granted access to data and survey permissions that were previously unavailable to independent researchers. Their first full report is expected later in 2026. For the first time in history, the mystery of Kailash is being taken seriously, not just by spiritual communities, but at a governmental and institutional scientific level. The 3D scan that changed everything. In February 2026, a team of researchers affiliated with a European aerospace technology firm working under a cultural heritage preservation mandate completed the first comprehensive high-resolution 3D scan of Mount Kailash's exterior, using a combination of LiDAR technology mounted on drone systems and satellite-based photogrammetry. They produced a detailed three-dimensional model of the mountain surface with a resolution accurate to within centimeters. What the scan revealed has quietly shocked the research community, even if mainstream media has been slow to report on it fully. The four faces of Mount Kailash are not just approximately symmetrical. According to the measurements produced by the scan, the angular deviation between the four faces is less than 1 degree. In practical terms, this means the mountain is closer to a geometrically perfect pyramid than virtually any natural structure on Earth that has ever been formally measured. For comparison, even the Great Pyramid of Giza, which was built by human hands, using enormous deliberate effort and precision, has a slightly greater degree of angular deviation between its faces than Kailash does. The scan also revealed something that ground-level observation had always suggested, but never confirmed with this level of detail. There are a series of horizontal ridges running across all four faces of the mountain at remarkably consistent intervals. These ridges are not random. They are spaced with a regularity that mirrors at a much larger scale the kind of stepped or terraced construction seen in ancient pyramidal structures found in Egypt, Central America, and Southeast Asia. Whether these ridges are the result of differential erosion, a natural geological layering process, or something else entirely, the scan data alone cannot determine. But their regularity is not easily explained by standard erosion patterns, which tend to produce irregular, varied formations, rather than consistent horizontal banding across all four faces simultaneously. The 3D model also identified a series of smaller formations on the plateau surrounding Kailash that, when viewed from above in the completed scan, appear to form a deliberate geometric arrangement around the central peak. Russian researcher Ernst Moldashev had described something similar based on ground observation 2 decades ago and was largely dismissed. The scan data now provides a measurable, documented basis for re-examining his original claim. Whether the arrangement is natural or intentional remains an open question, but it is no longer a question that can be brushed aside without serious examination. The mountain that refuses to be explained. Mount Kailash has stood at the center of human spiritual and scientific curiosity for thousands of years. And in 2026, that curiosity has finally reached a level of seriousness that matches the depth of the mystery itself. We now know through verified satellite data that 4 of Asia's greatest rivers originate from this single region, exactly as ancient texts described millennia ago. We know through documented climber accounts spanning centuries that the mountain actively resists being summited in ways that experienced professionals cannot explain. We know through the 2026 Joint Geological Study that the mountain's interior produces seismic signatures inconsistent with solid rock, pointing strongly toward large internal spaces that have never been explored. We know through thermal imaging that the upper atmosphere around the summit behaves in ways that current meteorological models cannot account for. And we know through the most precise 3D scan ever conducted of the mountain's surface that Kailash is geometrically closer to a perfect pyramid than almost any natural structure ever measured on this planet, complete with symmetrical horizontal ridges across all 4 faces, and a surrounding arrangement of formations that appear from above to be non-random. What we do not know is what all of this means. The monks of the Bon and Hindu traditions have their answer. They have always had it. To them, Kailash is not a geological puzzle waiting to be solved. It is a cosmic pillar, a meeting point between dimensions, a structure whose origins precede recorded human history, and whose true nature operates by principles that scientific instruments alone may never fully capture. Science, for its part, is no longer comfortable dismissing the question. The 2026 Research Committee, the atmospheric studies, the seismic data, and the 3D scan have collectively moved Kailash from the category of spiritual legend into the category of genuine scientific anomaly. That is not a small shift. The mountain has kept its secrets for thousands of years. Whether 2026 marks the beginning of those secrets finally coming to light, or simply the moment humanity became humble enough to admit it does not understand what it is looking at, remains to be seen. But one thing is now impossible to deny. Mount Kailash is not an ordinary mountain. It never was, and the closer we look, the less ordinary it becomes. So what do you think is really going on at Mount Kailash? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button right now. And while you're at it, hit the notification bell so you will never miss any videos.